So I've just got in from my Christmas party. It was a wild one. Belly shots, dancing on the tables, chess pieces flying. Christmas was the real winner. But we're going to dive into some chess right now. Park that one aside. Now we're picking up in the semi-finals here. It's Magnus Carlsen versus Fabiano Caruana. Magnus already a set to the good, so Fabi's got to win today. And we're picking up in game 2. This was an incredibly wild game. Now listen to what the commentators had to say at a certain point in time for Magnus.
Magnus, I think he's busted.
Magnus is busted, and Black, I don't think, is going to be able to fend it off.
So they've all but called it, but wow does this thing explode. So Fabi with white here, Magnus black. This is rapid chess. They're over the board though. It's in Toronto, Canada, and it starts out with a nice little Italian game. Very solid. Knight f6 from Magnus. d3 now played, and after bishop c5, listen to this from David Howell regarding the air quality in Canada.
Shout out to Air Things for showing us the air quality out there in Toronto. Looks like perfect conditions for the players.
So air quality under control right now. Good to hear, always important, but bear that one in mind for future because things take a turn later on. So we get bishop g5 played. Fabi going for this kind of idea instead of the manoeuvring stuff, putting a bishop here. So we get h6, sorry, a knight there. I may confuse words today. I had a couple beers last night. We get bishop h4 back. And now sometimes you get this pawn coming and bishop b6 and g5. But today we get bishop e7, breaking the pin like that. So Fabi already drops back his bishop, pressures the centre. We'd see d6 covering the pawn. a4, Fabi going for a little bit of space gain. Love to see it. Castles, a5. That pawn's got its marching shoes on. Is it going to go all the way? Home run. Well, bishop e6 from Magnus. He says, do your worst with the a-pawn. Fabi exchanges, shatters the pawns, yes, but does help Magnus take control of some squares, open the f-file, and now we don't see a6 played. If this comes on the board, you can go b5 and potentially that pawn can get weak later on, but it was a possible way to play. So instead, Fabi castles the king, and now Magnus voluntarily plays a strange looking move. He goes b5 here. Now what to do? Do you leave that one there? Leave the space? Here, leave this pawn here? Is it going to be attacked later? Well, Fabi, he does this one. He takes en passant, shouts out en passant in a French accent, because that's what you have to do over the board. It's part of FIDE regulations that you do shout that one in your best French accent. So Fabi goes for that. We get pawn recaptures, knight c3 developing, both players activating the queens, connecting the rooks. Always good policy, and now Magnus gallops forth with that steed in the centre. We see captures, a change of pawn structure. Why would you give Magnus that space? Well, f4 is now on the way. So e5 now played. Magnus locking things down on the dark squares. After c3, we get c5. The final boss of chess is on a side quest here to put all his pawns on dark squares. He's doing great at it. We get captures in the centre, pawn recaptures, and queen b4. Excellent move. I mean, it looks like you're walking into this sort of thing. But then the idea is not taking a pawn, opening lines for black, but queen b3. You pin that pawn to the king and, whoops, misfire. I told you I had a couple beers last night. This pawn is now sensitive in the centre. Black's crumbling here, white doing well. So, no d5. We see b5 instead. Magnus loves a bit of b5 action today. The queen drops back voluntarily, gives the check. We see king h7, you know, look at these Swiss cheese light squares, not ideal. Fabi wants to target them, and that's what this move's all about. Giving the a-file, yes, but now this rook doesn't have to babysit the other one. It can now go h3 first, rook c8 and f4. Vamos. Fabi taking the fight to Magnus here. Very pleasant position. And there's only one move that the engine gives to keep things roughly, you know, 0.5 better for white, which is rook c5. But what do we see played? We get knight h5 from Magnus. Natural idea, targeting these, opening the bishop, etc. But there's a big problem. because after captures, which Fabi plays, Magnus takes here, which makes things even worse. You know, the engine wanted to just take and give a pawn, but who plays like that? The knight recaptures, pawn takes, and rook f7. And you are now, sorry, ignore my arrow. You are now at 5.4 advantage for white. A huge winning advantage. It's roughly this moment where the commentators are like, yeah, Magnus is busted. He's dead. Now, what's the big problem here? Well, okay, knight f5, the immediate threat. That's why I was drawing the arrow, sorry. You'd pressure the bishop, the queen is pinned to the queen, and, you know, pressure coming on. So the queen slides back to d8, breaking that pin. And now you can immediately play this knight h5 attacking idea. But Fabi starts with queen e6. Magnus now drops back with the bishop. Okay, computer's favourite move there was putting the bishop here. But now, again, if Fabi goes knight h5, he's got this huge advantage here, because not only does he pressure g7, but he covers f6, which threatens lots of attacking ideas. So to give an idea of the threats here, say you go b4, well, now there's this rook d7, incredible attacking idea. And, you know, you can't go queen e8 or you run into knight f6 check, pawn's pinned, you pick up the queen. If you slide on one of the dark square diagonals, wherever you might go, there's this knight f6 check killer. And the problem is, king steps back, this is a mate. You know, the rook's protection is intercepted. If you don't step back, if you come up, this is also a checkmate here. So you have to give up the queen after the check. And obviously that's horrendous. You know, you take him back, there's no captures. These are some of the attacking ideas going on in the position. But Fabi misses knight to h5. Coming back here, instead, he plays an inferior move. But we do have to note something. Sorry, excuse me. So at this point, rumour has it that Magnus Carlsen actually let one rip. He let out a trump, a pump, a fizz banger, a bum whiz, a butt clap. He let out a little fart. And there was a big drop in air quality. You know, you see the air things gauge go from green to amber. Fabi's disorientated. What is going on? Magnus, it's not in the actual codes of conduct that you can't do it, but it's frowned upon, right? Magnus just goes for it. I don't know what he had for breakfast, right? So he lets that one rip. Fabi, what to do now? Well, he goes knight f5, inferior move. Magnus has just thrown him off his game. The air quality has dropped. So, in response, we now get this rook c1 check. The king comes to h2 and queen g5. Where is Magnus pulling these resources from? Not out his ass, but okay, he's pulling them from somewhere. Now, what to do here? Well, you're actually giving an entire piece, but it can't be captured. If you do this, queen f4 check. If g3, you get mated. If knight drops back, you lose that rook. So, okay, the bishop, untouchable. Now, you can take this pawn. It's one of the engine's top moves. Or you can go knight h4, second top move, which Fabi plays. And now after bishop b4 from Magnus, top idea, rotating round onto these kind of dark square diagonals, all sorts of nasties. Sorry, going back one move, I should say you can't take this knight or then you get mated. This is the trick, wherever that king steps. But yeah, Magnus coming here. Well, now, Fabi, what to do? He comes back, hits this queen, so it comes to g6, offering an exchange, and Fabi's actually got nothing better but to chop off the queens. You know, the rook is under fire and everything like that. The attack has fizzled out, so we see he captures. He does win a pawn, protect his rook at the same time, but after king h7, rook d7, Magnus is getting huge counterplay. Now, bishop c3, top engine move here, obviously. Why not put it on a square where it can be captured? Apparently black then gets play. But okay, Magnus plays the more natural rook c2. And now Fabi, his top move is h4. They're getting very low on time here. But look at this. He plays the natural captures. Computer gives it level. But there's so many swings to come. Air quality still poor. The clock time's down here. Lots of mistakes coming. So bishop d2. Tricky Magnus looks to check. Pick up the knight. King g3, therefore played. We get check. King here. Rook check. Magnus driving the rook over, king over, then capturing the pawn. Bishop f2 check. big threat. How many of us are blundering that in time trouble? Well, not Fabi. He's world number 2. Magnus picks up another pawn and d4. The central column of pawns is rumbling, connected. White should be winning here. b4, not the best, but okay, it's natural. Push 'em, baby, as Yasser would say. We get rook b7 coming behind the pawn. Excuse me. Now bishop c3 covers, looks at these squares, and knight f3 back, just holding everything together. And that's a great defender of the king. Rook g3 from Magnus, looks to pick up the h-pawn. d5, Fabi gets rumbling. King g6, king f4, now rook takes on h3, and e5. Fabi is doing great, he's winning. This king is just cut. All of his pieces perfectly placed here. Really nice stuff. Rook h1 from Magnus, d6, rook d1 comes behind. And now, here, Fabi just had to recognise his pieces are beautifully placed. Just start improving the king. King e4 is one idea. That sort of thing. But Fabi goes check. Very natural idea, because after king h5, you get knight f5. He's in love with that square today. Knight f5. And it looks great, because now this one's supported. The pawns are free to run. But there's a problem. This is why there was a swing. Because now check, you drive the king here, check, and look at this. The e-pawn is dropping off the board. Are you kidding me? Magnus doing some Houdini stuff. So Fabi drops back with the knight, but now there's this tactic. That one drops, and if captures, there's takes with check, should be a drawing line. So d7 tried by Fabi. He's about to make a baby girl here. So bishop f6 covers. We get takes. Now Magnus pushes his own pawn on. Rook b5 check, apparently best, but there's not much in it. King f5 played to hit this bishop, covering the square, and Magnus says take it. I'll chop your knight. Now a queen is about to be made, so rook d3, king e6 covers the pawn, king h4 from Magnus, rook b5 sets up a sneaky threat, air quality is recovered by this point, the fart has dissipated, and therefore both players thinking clearly. Magnus sees the threat, so he takes this pawn, brilliancy. You can't let the rook intercept and then you make the queen. So king recaptures, but these ones are marching. Is it enough to secure the draw, or is Magnus going to win here? The rook's coming back. The second pawn starts running. We get a check, king h2. The queen is about to be made. So rook b2 covers the push. Now Magnus pushing the second. King marches in. Is Fabi in time? Well, yes. We get to this point. Magnus only has one legal move, which is king h1. No, I'm joking. It's pushing the pawn. So he does it. We get takes. The final pawn drops, and we get a draw. A peaceful result, but my favourite game of the matchup. Now, what was the actual outcome of the entire thing? Well, they drew one each. They won one each. It went to Armageddon, and Magnus, in Magnus style, he clinched it with the white pieces. He goes through to a final against Wesley. I'll do my best to cover that one, although again, I do have something going on Saturday night, so it's going to be hit and miss how much I can get up straight away. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope to see you again soon. Check out the video on screen for the epic game, and cheers.